We're pleased to have you back with the A4Q Testing Summit Jubilee Edition, coming to you live from Marrakesh, Morocco. With the new updates of the Selenium automation tool, quite a lot has changed in the architecture. In this session, we have the MSTQB President, Lovelesh Beeharry, who has 11 years of experience in software quality assurance and is here to share his expertise in a discussion about the new face of Selenium. Over to you, Lovelesh.
Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world. I am Lovelesh. I'm streaming live from Marrakesh. And today we have an interesting topic that we'll be exploring together. It's about the new face of Selenium. So with the recent update of Selenium, many things have changed about the tool and so on. So today we'll just deep dive into those changes and we'll explore it together. So just a little about myself. So I'm Lovelesh. I'm from Mauritius, and I'm a CEO of a global company there in Mauritius. I'm a software test professional. I'm specialized in non-functional testing. I have around 13 years of experience now in the software quality industry, and worked for quite some IT companies in manual testing, automation testing, performance testing. I'm now exploring as well part of artificial intelligence there. I'm the current president and the founder of MSTQB, which is the Mauritian chapter for ISTQB. I'm also a software quality consultant, a coach, a conference speaker, and an ISTQB trainer. That's a little about me. Now, let's explore what we'll talk today. So today we'll talk, we'll see an overview about Selenium tools, then a timeline about the Selenium project itself, where it started and where it is right now. The core of the presentation will be about Selenium 4. That's the latest version that is out there. And we'll do a comparison between the previous version, which is Selenium 3 and Selenium 4, for us to understand what really changed in the tool, in the software itself, in the automation tool. And also we'll explore about what's coming next for Selenium. And we'll end our session today with some questions and answers. So let's get started. So Selenium tool. So Selenium comes in 3 flavors. There is the Selenium ID, there is the Selenium WebDriver, and the Selenium Grid. So the ID is mostly the record and playback tool that is used to automate simple test cases. It is available as a browser extension, and it just record whatever the user is doing and just play it back multiple times over and over again. That's the Selenium ID. Then we have the Selenium WebDriver. So the WebDriver is a bit advanced. It is a little more advanced than the Selenium ID. What it does is it allows any test automation engineer actually to build a certain framework based on the bindings, on the language bindings, and so on. So they could use the Selenium WebDriver to scale test cases that is a bit difficult to do with the Selenium ID. So that's about the WebDriver. Then we have the Selenium Grid that give a better scalability for test execution over multiple machines running different operating system and browsers. So that's Selenium Grid. You can plug your test on Selenium Grid and it will be executed on multiple machines and even different configurations of operating system and browsers. So those are the tools that are available in the Selenium. Now, the timeline. So all started back with Selenium in 2004, where it was an internal project at ThoughtWorks. Since then, a lot have changed. So in 2006, there was some improvement in the core itself. There was it was getting closer to a 1.0 release of the tool, and the development of the ID was then conceived as well. Then in 2007, there was the extension of the concept. So it was a higher API-driven automation tool that would be using the WebDriver as base. Then we were closer in 2013 to be close to a release for 2.0, where there was the enhanced WebDriver, where things got a bit more stable over the WebDriver, and the grid development was supported in .NET and Java. Then the 3.0 release was in 2016, where we had the stable version for 3.0 in October. Then last year we had the release 4.0. So the conception of a higher API-driven automation tool was conceived, which now forms the base of Selenium WebDriver. Then we have the continuity, which is happening now over and over again. Now we are, as of now, we are in a release of 4.50. So there's some bug fixes, there's some enhancement of some features that is there. There's some optimization as well, which is now included in this version 4.5.0. So when we talk about Selenium 4, there are quite some items that changed. So few of them was the architectural change. So we have, compared to the previous one, there is quite some architectural change, and those were important to make the WebDriver W3C compliant. So what I mean by W3C is the World Wide Web Consortium. They are the organization behind that is handling the protocol of the internet, behind making sure that websites are conform to a certain standard and so on. So they define also some standard for the browsers, and now with Selenium 4, the WebDriver is now compliant with the W3C guidelines. So it's something positive because it's giving a stability as well with the test that we run on the WebDriver. Then we have the inclusion of something very interesting that I use in few of my tests. It's relative locators. So we'll dive into the relative locators as well in subsequent slides. We have the deprecation of desired capabilities that was used in Selenium 3.0. Now it's being replaced with options, which gives a better way. It's a better way of managing the browser itself, the way it operates, the way it interacts with the WebDriver, the WebDriver instantiated browser. Then there is an improvement in terms of the window and tab management. So that as well improves the way that a TAE or a test automation engineer could actually interact with different browsers, with different windows of the same browser, or different tabs in the same browser. So that's improved as well in Selenium 4. We have the Chrome DevTool protocol. So it's known also as CDP. So CDP is allowing quality engineers to investigate issues directly using Selenium 4 now. So there is an extensive methods that is out there now to use the CDP in the tests. Then we have an upgraded ID and an improved version of Selenium Grid. So as of now, we are in Selenium 4.5.0. That's the latest stable version. Selenium 4 was announced in 2018, and it was the first stable version released last year in October. Right. So let's talk about the W3C compliance. So in these two diagrams, you will see that in Selenium 3, there is in between the client and the server, there is something known as the JSON wire protocol. So what it was doing, it was taking requests from the client and then conveying it back to the server there. The browser would then interact with the browser drivers itself, would then interact with the real web browser to carry out the action. And all these were happening on HTTP request. So to be compliant with the W3C protocol, this JSON wire protocol had to be removed. So with Selenium 4 now, the client interact with the server directly. There is no JSON wire protocol in between. And this actually gives a certain stability and a certain speed as well to the test, because there is not an intermediate element there to do the conversion between the client and the server. So that's one important change, maybe the most important change as well in Selenium 4. And this set actually the W3C compliance set the base for a lot of development that is happening around Selenium, because it's now much more easier to include other browsers and to get cross-browser scalability. So the next change was about the relative locators. So initially, the way in Selenium 3 we used to work was we used to find elements by using XPath, by using CSS, by using ID, and so on. And there was no way to find an element and specify where it was relative to another element. So I could say now with Selenium 4, I can say that I'm looking for a certain element on the web page that is above another element. or below another element, to the left of it, to the right of it, or near it. So near has a certain definition as well. It's around 50 pixels away from the specified element. So you could now find elements on your web page using those relative locators. So in terms of positioning, above, below, to the left, to the right, or near it. And that's a big flexibility that we have now with Selenium 4 that makes finding of elements easier, makes it more intuitive as well, because this is the way that you would implement it. The WebDriver input field, you're searching for a certain field, you will have the WebDriver dot find element with a certain tag name, and then that tag name will include the text, and then dot to the right of a certain text label. So it will find all the elements that is having the tag input, which is right to a certain, which is of the, to the right of a certain label there. So then that web element will be instantiated. So that's quite some flexibility when you are writing locators in Selenium 4. The next change was an important one as well. It's the deprecation of the desired capability. So it's being replaced with options. So in Selenium 3, you would define desired capability. You would instantiate it, for example, caps over here, and then you would use desired capability dot the browser. In this case, it's Firefox. Then you would define caps. Then you would set the capability, like the platform to be Windows 10, the version to be a certain version, and so on. And now the way that you would do the same is with Selenium 4 is to define the Firefox options. In this case for Firefox. So Firefox option, you can name it as browser option. So you're instantiating it, this browser option, as a new Firefox option. And then you're using that option to set the platform name, the browser name, etc. So this desired capability now has more options in it that would I would also say that these browser options have much more methods in it to incorporate a lot of changes there. So things that was difficult to actually manage with desired capabilities now much more flexible with options. Right. And the improved tab and window management. So it was quite challenging. It was quite challenging with Selenium 3 to actually manage multiple tabs. I tried it as well with the framework that I developed. So you had to instantiate a different WebDriver object, then switch to a certain tab or a window, and then switch back when the test is done on that tab or the window. Then you have to switch back to the primary one, and you have to use a session and so on. So it was quite complex. It was quite a mess as well in the coding side when you have to instantiate a new WebDriver and you get confused which driver is which one. So this was greatly improved. This problem was greatly improved now with Selenium 4. So, sorry. Going back. Yeah, with Selenium 4, this problem is greatly improved now because we don't need to instantiate a new WebDriver object now. We just need one instantiation of the WebDriver. You don't need to create a new session. You can use that same WebDriver to interact with multiple tabs or multiple windows. So you would use the switch to, then new window. This is the new method, the new window, and then window type. You would specify whether it's a window or it's a tab. And then you could use your test on those windows and your tab. You could run it, and then once it is done, you can just close it or return back to the same, return back to the original window as well. Yeah, and the Chrome dev tool protocol. So having this dev tool on Chrome is important for developers. It's important for testers because it allows developers to edit the page on runtime. So when the website is published, they can edit the page there. They can for testers is used to investigate issues. It's easier to investigate API issues or to check the console to find errors and so on. So with Selenium 4 now you have the flexibility. You have more methods with CDP to actually retrieve this information from the dev tool. So it's easier to interpret those information, to check for the console, to check for the API status, or check as well whether there is any failure or any errors on the page which is mentioned in the console in terms of an API failure. So it can be used, these CDP options or methods can be used on any Chromium-based browser like Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, etc. So we now, when we compare those changes within Selenium 3 to 4 on the Selenium IDE, the IDE is now much more stylish because it has a new UI. That project nearly died because it was only on Firefox initially. Now it's on Edge, it's on Chrome as well. So you can automate your test cases directly on Chrome, on Firefox, on Edge. You just need to install the browser extension and can move forward from there. There is also something interesting in the IDE which makes it a bit stronger because there is a backup element locator strategy. So this feature is actually triggered when your test is failing. Let's say you have a test where you're looking for an element and there was a UI change. The element is still there, but there was some attributes in it that changed. The first locator is not working. So you have the option there to specify another locator that will be picked up by Selenium IDE and then execute. The test will be executed based on that. So this backup element locator strategy is something interesting for test engineers to use IDE as well to automate. Then you have the side runner. So side runner is a Selenium IDE runner that allows execution of tests that was recorded on Selenium IDE on Selenium Grid. So we are now able to plug Selenium IDE test onto the Selenium Grid to have a certain scalability as well for test execution. You can run it on multiple machines or on local machines, that is forming your machine cluster there. With Selenium 4, you have the options now to export those recorded tests on Selenium IDE towards different languages. So we have different language binding like Java, C#, and Python. You could export those recorded tests in those languages. And you can use those languages actually to make the test compatible later on with WebDriver. So you see those tools are now interconnected with Selenium 4. So all these features actually give a certain reliability and scalability during the test execution. And that's, again, enforcing the power of Selenium IDE as well. It's not just now regarded just for simple test cases or for test cases that just need to be executed one-off. It can be something that is much more long-term on the Selenium IDE. But still, if you need something more flexible, then you will need the Selenium WebDriver because you'll need the support of the language as well to have those flexibility. Then what about the grid? So there are some features that was upgraded on the grid in Selenium 4. So the first one being the hub and the node. Initially, it was two different jar file or two different executable file that was used to initialize the hub and then initialize the node. Now it's done in a single executable file, in a single jar file. By executing that jar file, the hub and the node can be instantiated, can be connected on the grid. So that's an advantage there. And now Selenium Grid supports IPv6. What it means is that communication is happening on now IPv6. The node and the node and the hub are now connected on IPv6, which means that there is more possibility to connect more machines to it. There is also the configuration of the grid, which is now in a language known as TOML, so TOML. That's TOM, obvious minimal language. It's a very intuitive language. It's written really in human readable form, human interpretable form. So the configuration of the grid as well can be done very intuitively, very easily, without in-depth knowledge of the architecture of the grid. There is scalability and traceability in the infrastructure. Now we have routers in place, session map, distributors, and nodes. So there is a certain reliability as well, because all these elements are now into the grid architecture. They are responsible for a single item, and this again increases the scalability and the traceability of commands being sent from the hub to the node. There is communication between the grid, within the grid itself, happening over HTTPS protocol now, which again add up to the security of the communication between the hub and the nodes. And it's easier to now use the VM, the virtual machines on grid, because we have the Docker support. You could deploy as well the grid with Kubernetes as well, because it's supported in Selenium 4. Right. That was a bit about what changed on Selenium 3 towards 4. So those are some key highlights on the changes. And now what's coming up? So there is the enhancement of the WebDriver BiDi. So WebDriver BiDi is there. The Selenium community is working closely with a lot of browser providers, um, browser stacks, and so on. So those are included with this discussion for the WebDriver BiDi, and the aim is to make cross-browser testing more stable, more reliable. So, right. So when there is a browser update, where there is a browser version, a major jump in the version, so there won't be any need to change the code. So there is an enhancement over there on the WebDriver BiDi, which is coming up. Then we have the Selenium project is planning as well to upgrade to Java 11. They're still figuring out the roadmap for it. They may be jumping as well to the latest version, which is 17 as well. Java 17 could be in their plan. So there is a major change that will happen, and that major change from Java 8, right now it's supported with Java 8 minimum, to Java 11 or 17. That would be a major leap forward, because there will be more actions, there will be more flexibilities as well in the Java language, programming language, that could be used as well on automation. There is an interesting item on the way for the future of Selenium. That's the Selenium Manager, and the concept there is very interesting, because the idea behind the Selenium Manager is when you run the test, if you don't have the Chrome browser or you're running on Firefox browser, that Selenium Manager could install that browser for you to run the test. So you don't have to even manage your browser. That's simply a very alluring aspect of Selenium, which is coming up, and I'm quite excited actually to see this in action. So this could be used for even headless testing when you don't have even Chrome installed. You could use Chromium headless mode to launch your tests, and the the Selenium Manager would just handle the request to install the browser and then run the test for you. So that's one headache as well, less for the test automation engineer. Then the last one, which is also in discussion, is the async programming in Python and .NET for the language binding. So those languages are evolving as well. So we now use .NET, Python for a lot of asynchronous processing, for a lot of async commands there. So we'll need to have those flavor of async as well in the language binding, so that we have this possibility of writing tests in an asynchronous mode as well. So that's those are few exciting items which is coming up for Selenium. Right. Now, about Selenium. So it's important to get involved, because Selenium is an open source project. So it relies really on the community actually to grow. So there is some good stats on Selenium. It's growing like 25% every quarter, and that's an amazing growth. For the last year, from Q1 to Q4, there was up around 25% more people using Selenium with Selenium 4 and so on. So it's a growing community, and it's growing very well. So there is a lot of exciting project and features coming up. The scope of work is not only coding, so that's the beauty as well with the Selenium project and the Selenium community. If you're not at least with coding, with API and so on, there is a lot of other work that you could help in with this initiative. There is documentation, maintenance, there is bugs that need to be tested, there is bugs that need to be reported as well in a correct way, and so on. So the scope of work is not only coding. That's a misconception that we have. To be on Selenium project, you need to be a die-hard coder, or really be knowledgeable about in-depth coding. So there is a lot of work out there in the community that could help in. So the tagline is that Selenium is made by the community for the community. So for it to continue to grow, and for it to continue to gain the market share of automation as well, the community need to be strong, and it's growing as well. It's a strong product that have been there for nearly 2 decades now. So your involvement now will make that product even better. So to get involved, you just need to visit selenium.dev, and you will see the Slack channel there. You will see there is an IRC channel. There is the Google group as well, where there is quite some interaction there. All the discussions are open. Everything is happening very transparently in there, and it's good to be involved in that community. So on A4Q side, we are planning to have a new certification under the banner for A4Q. That's a Selenium tester for the syllabus 2.0 now. So we already have one syllabus, which is 1.0. Now we have an upgrade in it. We are launching it soon. And if you want to be part of the review for the syllabus, you want to be part of the review of the syllabus, please feel free to just mail us on info@a4q.eu, and we'll be in touch with you about how to proceed with the reviews there. Right, so that was it about Selenium. And if you have any question, I'll be glad to clarify that. Feel free to shoot some question to me.
Thank you so much for your presentation. We do have a couple of questions for you. I'm going to prompt it onto the screen and read it out. What are the most used languages for the programming on Selenium?
Right. So Selenium support a lot of programming languages. They have some mainstream programming languages that is very much popular in the market. Includes Java, .NET, and Python. And starting with Python is quite easy. And but the most used one I would say would then be Java and .NET, because those languages are very mature in terms of flexibility that they give to build a certain framework for industry level. And Java and Python would be my first choice for programming with then Selenium. Yeah.
Our next question: why was the change for the JSON wire protocol in the Selenium architecture important?
Right. Okay. So that change was an architectural change. The JSON wire protocol used to sit between the client and the server, and what it does, the main purpose of having the JSON wire protocol was because the client and the server could not communicate directly. They need a certain conversion in between. So when information was being sent from the client side, from the browser towards the server side, so that information needed to be encoded, sent to the JSON wire protocol, then decoded over there, and then sent to the language binding to the browser driver, and then that would channel towards over HTTP towards the browser itself. So there was this action of encoding and decoding that was happening, and it was not as per the protocol that was set for W3C. So what was needed now to make that action seamless, or to make that pipeline from going from the client to the server, to make it faster, was to remove that component that would encode and decode it. So it's the language binding, or the client side, that would interact directly with the server without those conversions. So there is no encoding and decoding there, and this make the operation faster and much more stable. And that was the main reason why it was changed, and also to be W3C compliant. Yeah.
Thank you. We have another question. Is the Chrome DevTool protocol and WebDriver BIDI the same?
Right. Well, that's a misconception, because I often get this question when I talk about Selenium. So the WebDriver BiDi means bidirectional. So the purpose of having the WebDriver BiDi is to make testing really good, independent, based on the browser and the version that you're using. So that's the real cross-browser testing. But the CDP or the Chrome Dev Tool, that's something different, because that would allow you to interact with the Dev Tool based on the Chromium browsers, for example, Edge, for example, as well Chrome, Google Chrome. So those browsers are using Chromium Core or the kernel, and the CDP will work on them. So there are quite some methods that you have on CDP. They have it as well on the WebDriver BiDi, but the objective or the vision going forward is to have the same flexibility on the BiDi, so that it can work on all the browsers. So that's the real cross browser function there. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us at the A4Q Testing Summit here in Marrakesh. Be sure to tune in to our social media channels, where all of our streams are live for the rest of the evening. And you can tune in on Skills Club, where all of the presentations and videos are available. Lovelesh, thank you so much for your time, and I
Thank
wish
you,
you a good
Abby.
evening. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Abby. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye. Stay safe.